Well, we are really, really proud of you all tonight. You are the valedictorians and the salutatorians of our high schools, and you have worked so hard for so long, and you can now see the finish line. It's kind of like climbing a mountain, isn't it? It's tough, it's a lot of work, and you're really getting near the top. And I'm going to tell you something that I know you're going to be glad to hear, and I know you're going to be glad that your parents are here to hear it as well. And that is that it didn't just seem hard. It didn't just seem harder than it used to be. It didn't just seem like you worked harder than probably anybody has ever worked. It really is. And you can, I don't know if you want to throw a tomato or what, but you can thank the superintendent and board for making it harder and harder to get a high school diploma. We're trying to exercise those muscles for you so that you will be better prepared for college and for the world, because the world is changing. And it is true by any standard, and these things can be measured, that it is in fact harder to get a high school diploma now than it has ever been. And it is harder to get into college now than it has ever been. And I'm afraid to say it's harder to get out of a really good college now than it ever has been. And that's because the world is changing. And I'm just glad that you all are up to the challenge and that you've done that work. So parents, when you've been hearing all the whining and the complaining and all of the positive comments from your children about how difficult it is, it was true all along. Now, you really have done well, but I want you to know that when you get to the mountaintop and you're getting close, there's a surprise waiting for you. And I've been there, and it feels great. The air is clean. There are not too many other people up there. You can look and see for a long way. You left a lot of folks behind, or they just didn't quite go as fast as you did. So you're there alone for a little while, and that it really does feel nice. And you can relax for just a little while, and then you're going to realize the surprise. And the surprise is that there's another mountain. And it's actually a little higher than the first one, and that's called college. And then there's another mountain after that, and that'll be your career. And there are going to be all kinds of mountains up there. You're never going to be finished climbing those mountains. And that is a challenge, but that's also what makes life wonderful. I mean, as long as you've got a positive attitude towards that, and you might as well, I think you do have a positive attitude, or you wouldn't be where you are now. But I'm going to do something that I almost never do, and that is to read just a bit from somebody else's speech. Now, it's a speech many of you have never heard, but it is from a great man, and I actually think that this part of the speech is about you today. Martin Luther King said these words the night before he died, and he called it, "I have been to the mountaintop." And one of the things he talked about that night was about making the most of today. And for him, today was the journey that he was on, and it was about what was happening in the early 1960s. But for you, I want you to think about right now. I want you to think about yourself. I want to think about what is ahead of you today. He said, "If I were standing at the beginning of time with the possibility of taking a kind of general and panoramic view of the whole of human history up to now, and the Almighty said to me, 'Martin Luther King, which age would you like to live in?' I would take my mental flight by Egypt, and I would watch God's children in their magnificent trek from the dark dungeons of Egypt through, or rather across the Red Sea, through the wilderness, on towards the Promised Land. And in spite of its magnificence, I wouldn't stop there. I'd move on to Greece and take my mind to Mount Olympus, and I would see Plato and Aristotle and Socrates and Euripides and Aristophanes assembled around the Parthenon, and I'd watch them around the Parthenon as they discussed the great and eternal issues of reality, but I would not stop there. I'd go on, even to the great heyday of the Roman Empire, and I'd see the developments around there through various emperors and leaders, and I wouldn't stop there. I'd even come up to the day of the Renaissance. I'd get a quick picture of all that the Renaissance did for the cultural and aesthetic life of man, but I wouldn't stop there. I'd even go by way of the man for whom I'm named had his habitat, and I would watch Martin Luther as he tacked his 95 Theses on the door of the church at Wittenberg, but I wouldn't stop there. And I'd come on up even to 1863 and watch a vacillating president by the name of Abraham Lincoln finally come to the conclusion that he had to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. But I wouldn't stop there. I would even come up to the early 30s and see a man grappling with the problems of the bankruptcy of his nation and come with the eloquent cry that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. But I wouldn't stop there. Strangely enough, I would turn to the Almighty and say, if you allow me to live just a few years in the second half of the 20th century, I will be happy. Now, for Martin Luther King, the most important moment in history was the early 1960s. And for you, though, it is right now. My friends, next month, you are embarking on a great journey. And you're equipped for the journey because of the work you've done and the graduation that you are about to achieve. And you have two things that no one can ever take away from you. You have knowledge that you have gained over the years, and you're going to have the knowledge that you continue to gain. And you have the power of critical thinking. But you're not in Egypt, you're not in Greece, you're not in Rome, you're not in Gettysburg. You are right here. And it's up to you what you do right here, right now, and for the rest of your life. And I know you're going to make the most of it. So I want you to go out and do good things with your life. We're all behind you. We are never going to forget you. We are so very proud of you today. You're climbing to the mountaintop.